Many Canadians expressing outrage at Justin Trudeau's latest scandals, along with his government's passing of an anti-free speech bill for social media, are having a difficult time finding their posts calling out Justin Trudeau. The hashtags Trudeau corruption and Free Canada are currently trending on Twitter, yet conveniently for Justin Trudeau, there's a glitch on Twitter right now where when you search for Trudeau corruption, many people are getting no results for some reason. This just following yesterday's news that Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party has passed Bill C-10, the anti-free speech bill used to regulate social media and streaming platforms. Meanwhile, here's another article from just a few days ago pointing out how the taxpayer-funded Canadian broadcasting company has just decided to shut down all Facebook comments, saying that they have to censor all commenters to protect their journalists' mental health and protect free speech. Yes, Trudeau's media network is ironically trying to argue that by shutting down all comments and censoring everyone, they are somehow protecting free speech. First, looking at today's article, The National Post, with more info on the latest news around Bill C-10. They open saying Canadian lawmakers passed a controversial bill that aims to regulate programming distributed by media streaming services and social platforms like Facebook and YouTube, a measure that critics warn could infringe on individual speech. The legislation drafted by Justin Trudeau's government, known as Bill C-10, is meant to subject tech giants to the same requirements as traditional broadcasters, effectively compelling companies like Netflix and TikTok to finance and promote Canadian content. It's among the most far-reaching plans by governments anywhere to regulate the algorithms tech companies use to amplify or recommend content. Of course, when Justin Trudeau says he wants platforms to promote Canadian content, he really means that he wants to prop up his selected media outlets favored by the Liberal Party, organizations like the CBC, who do whatever they can to protect Trudeau and the corrupt establishment, while attacking free speech on their own heavily censored platforms. Last week, the Canadian Broadcasting Company complained that they were apparently facing vitriol and harassment for doing their jobs. They say, quote, "For journalists, platforms like Twitter can be a great way to find sources and promote their work, but also a cesspool of hatred. Increasingly, reporters are also physically attacked." Next, they claim that women and journalists of color have seen increased abuse, according to CBC President Catherine Tate. In her opinion, those threats pose attacks to free speech and democracy. This article steps in to ask, and what better way to enable free speech than to shut down all speech? In their report, the CBC said, quote, "That's why beginning on Wednesday and for the next month, we will close comments on all news links and video posts to the Facebook pages belonging to the journalism division of the CBC." Their report continued, quote, "We have built significant audiences on social media platforms through our program and news accounts. These are vital ways to reach Canadians, and we believe in serving content to people there like we do on TV, radio, web, and apps. In fact, some of our social channels boast record numbers, increasing reach and growing engagement with millions of Canadians. But as the conversation has degraded on these platforms, we find ourselves limiting what we post here. We know certain stories will draw out obnoxious and hateful comments. The truth is, we spend a considerable amount of attention and resources attempting to moderate our Facebook posts. It takes a mental toll on our staff, who must wade into the muck in an effort to keep the conversation healthy for others. It is not sustainable," the report concludes. "We continue to welcome comments on our website, cbcnews.ca, where we have more moderating tools and can focus our attention better on offering a respectful dialogue about our stories." So how long until they take the next step and censor all comments on their own website? Going back to look at this morning's article, the National Post, on Trudeau's latest bill aimed at regulating content on social media. Now, before this, Trudeau's government has tried to claim that this bill will not target individual speech online, though this is being questioned by many who have looked at the details of Bill C-10. They say here the challenge is how to regulate content on the internet without undermining individual freedom of expression. The bill's language is ambiguous on this point, according to its critics. Some of it can be interpreted as saying that user activity won't be regulated, while other parts suggest the content produced on user-driven sites will be. An internet law professor at the University of Ottawa, asked about this, said, quote, "It is not at all clear how this would be implemented. Would Canadians be required to disclose that they're Canadian to meet these requirements? It's hard enough, frankly, to identify what constitutes Canadian content for conventional broadcast." Next, they highlight how discoverability has emerged as the most contentious part of the legislation, with outsized effects on YouTube because it relies so much on user-generated videos. Supporters say the requirement falls well short of censorship because users could continue to post content freely. This article here says that that misses the point, according to critics, because controlling which content is amplified or drowned out, which, as we all know, these big tech platforms already do, so this will only worsen the bias that's already happening on these social media sites. This is especially worrying, however, when the government is involved in controlling this type of speech in this way. Another quote here says, "From my view, that's pretty clear government regulation of speech, saying some content gets prioritized and other content gets deprioritized." And once again, as we all know, the platforms that are likely to be amplified by this government bill will be the same outlets that are pushing even more censorship. Again, Trudeau's government looks especially bad when even YouTube and their parent company Google, with all the censorship that happens on their websites, is saying that Trudeau is taking things too far with this anti-free speech bill. YouTube is opposed to the legislation. YouTube admits that this bill would make it even more difficult for independent creators as well as new and emerging channels to have their content seen. The head of public policy at YouTube Canada wrote in a June 2nd blog post, quote, "The rules around what is considered Canadian content are complex, and it is very difficult to qualify. This stands to impact all creators, but we are especially concerned about the impact on new and emerging creators, as they will be up against players who have been following these rules for decades." Kevin Chan, the head of public policy for Facebook Canada, said by email, quote, "We know that creating rules to govern speech online is complex and important work, and we look forward to being consulted in support of this work." Please leave a comment and tell me what you think about this latest update. If you could give this video a thumbs up, remember to click the like button, that's greatly appreciated, and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. As usual, I'd just like to thank everyone who has been supporting this channel with your donations over at Patreon or PayPal, and with your super chats as well. It's greatly appreciated. Even just a few dollars makes a huge difference and helps me keep talking about these important issues. You can find either link down in the video description, where you can support this channel directly, patreon.com/realityreader or paypal.me/realityreader. I will follow up soon. Thanks again.